and welcome back to BHookedCrochet.com. I'm your host Brittany, and in this episode I'm going to demonstrate how to crochet the skyscraper cowl. This is a free pattern that's available at BHookedCrochet.com. You can find the link to that pattern in the description below. To complete one cowl, you're going to need 2 skeins of Isaac Mizrahi skyscraper yarn in the colorway of your choice, a size 6.5mm hook, a darning needle, and a pair of scissors. To begin our cowl, we just want to start off with a slip knot. And then place that loop on your hook and chain 100. Once you've made your 100 chains, then it's time to join to form a ring. So one thing you want to make certain you do is make sure your chain is not twisted. So find that top part of the chain and just run it through your fingers and untwist it. Okay, and when you're certain that it's not twisted, you're going to find that first chain. And so bear with me a little bit with this section of the yarn being so dark. It does lighten up as we go. But you want to insert your hook into the first chain. And I'm just grabbing one of the loops of the chain. Okay, this part's not important. You can grab 2 loops or 1. The main thing is that you get it in that first chain and then you wrap the working yarn and pull it through that first loop and then through the loop on your hook. That's a slip stitch. So we've slip stitched this together and we've formed our ring. Now we're ready to move on to round 1. For round 1, we're going to be working in half double crochets, but we're going to do something a little bit different with these half double crochets than what we normally do. We're going to work in the back loop only starting on the next round. But I say that because we're only going to chain 1 to start off this round. And that's because when we're working in that back bar only, or the camel stitch as it's called, it's going to make our stitches shorter than normal, and so we need a shorter starting chain. So we'll talk about that as the time approaches, but for now just chain 1, and we want to make 1 half double crochet into every single chain. And you can work this into any part of the chain that you're comfortable with. I like to flip my chain over and work in the back bar, but you can work in the side loops or in 2. This part is completely up to you. Okay, when you've made it all the way back around, you want to make sure and double check and count your stitches. We're going to count that chain 1 as a stitch. And so we want to have 99 when we come, so 99 half double crochets when we come all the way around. And we want to find that very first chain. Now as I said, bear with me here, this first part of the yarn here was a little dark, so I have my first chain right here. And you just want to insert your hook into that chain and slip stitch. And that completes round 1. For round 2, we're going to start the camel stitch, or this faux knitting pattern here. And what we're going to do again is start with the chain 1, and we want to look at the top of the stitches. Now I'm going to jump over here to these lighter color stitches just for demonstration. So we see the V here on the top. Okay, so we've got the back loop and the front loop, and if we rotate it again, then you can see a bar. Okay, so that's called the back bar, and that's where we work our stitches into for the camel stitch. So to show you that again, you've got the regular front loop and the back loop, and then if you rotate it again, you'll see this bar right here, and that's where we're going to be working our stitches. And I'm just demonstrating on this back part here because it's lighter than these first few stitches. So we've chained 1, and we just want to rotate our work forward and work 1 half double crochet into each of the back bars. And what it's doing when we're working in the back bar, again, you can't really see it on this first row just because that yarn is too dark, but we'll look at this row here. When we work in the back bar, what it's going to do is pull that top part of the stitch forward, and it's going to give it that faux ribbing texture. So that's what I have going on here, and as I mentioned, you can't really see that on camera, but as we go along, and if you're using a different colorway than I am, you should be seeing that pattern and that texture already emerge. And we just want to repeat this all the way around. Once you made it all the way around from round number 2, then we're ready to join with a slip stitch to that first chain. And that will finish off round 2. Now if you're following along with the written instructions, rounds 3 through 5 are exactly the same as round 2. So I'm going to cover real briefly just how to begin. We want to start by chaining 1. And we're going to make a half double crochet in the back bar only of every single stitch. So at this point you're probably getting the hang of working this half double crochet in the back loop only. And since the next few rows or few rounds are going to be exactly the same as what we demonstrated earlier on in this video, why don't you go ahead and finish up rounds 3 through 5 the exact same way, and then come back to this video and we'll work on round 6, which is going to be a different part of the design as we progress with this pattern. So once you've finished up round 5, your cowl should look something like this. And moving on to round 6, we're going to work just a row of single crochet. So we're going to chain 1, and we're going to work these also in that back bar only. That's going to pull this very last round of half double crochets forward to kind of continue our pattern the way that it should be. So round 6 is relatively simple. Just go ahead and make one single crochet into each of your back bars of every stitch. So once you've reached the end of round 6, we're going to join with a slip stitch to that first chain. And now we're ready to begin round 7. Rounds 7 through 16 are going to be exactly the same. We're going to cover it on here, round 7, and then we'll talk about how to start off round 8, just so you can see how each one of these rounds kind of build upon each other. To start out, we need to chain 2. We're going to make a double crochet cluster. We're going to work it in the same space that we started our chain 2, and the chain 2 is going to act as part of the double crochet cluster. So this one stitch is going to be different than all the rest, and that's just because it's where we're starting. So go ahead and yarn over, insert your hook into the same space, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2. Now we're just going to leave those 2 loops on our hook and repeat that. And once you have 3 parts to the double crochet cluster and you have 3 loops on your hook, then we'll just yarn over and pull through all 3. Then we're just going to chain 1, and we'll skip a stitch, work the next double crochet cluster into the next stitch. And I'm working under both of the loops of the single crochet. Now if we look at this closely, we have a loop from our first cluster, and then we have a loop for each of the 3 parts of the double crochet cluster. When you have 4 loops on your hook, then we can go ahead and yarn over and pull through all 4, and again we'll chain 1, skip a stitch, work the next double crochet cluster into the next stitch. I have 4 loops on my hook again. Skip a stitch, work into the next. Now this is the pattern repeat for round 7 through 16. It's going to be exactly the same. Let's go ahead and finish up round 7. We'll talk about how to join and then how to build each of the next few rounds that we're going to be working in this pattern. So once you've made it all the way around round number 7, Then we're ready to join with a slip stitch to that very first double crochet cluster, and we're just going to do that. Join with a slip stitch, and then we're ready to begin the next round. So I mentioned before that rounds 7 through 16 are going to be exactly the same. So I'm going to demonstrate just how we're going to start off. Since we have this join here, it might get a little bit confusing. But from the join, we're just going to chain 2. And we're going to kind of be working backwards. So we're going to be working this stitch in this gap space here. We've just got 2 there since we have that chain 2 counting as part of that stitch. And then we're just going to proceed like normal. We want to chain in between each cluster and then just work the next double crochet cluster into the next gap space. Okay, so that is all there is to rounds 7 through 16. And so right now we're finishing up round 8. And so what I need for you to do is finish up this round and all the way up through round 16, just like we've demonstrated here. Then come back to the video. We'll talk about how to finish off our pattern. Now once you've finished up to rounds 16, your cowl should look something like this. Now we basically need to just duplicate this front section to finish off the cowl. So it's sort of like a mirror image. It's the same on the top as it is the bottom. For round 17, we're going to continue by chaining 1. And now we want to make a half double crochet into every clustered stitch and every space in between. So you want to yarn over, and we're going to go directly into that stitch that's over top of our first cluster. Make a half double crochet. And then we're going to go directly in the space in between the next cluster. Okay. Then half double crochet in the clustered stitch. And in the space in between. And we just want to repeat that all the way around. Now that I'm in an area where I can show you the stitches a little bit better because this yarn's lighter, I'm going to show you exactly where I'm placing my half double crochet stitches. So I'm considering this space right here to be the gap. So you want to put your half double crochet into just that space. You don't need to go into a chain or anything like that. And the stitch that finished off the cluster stitch is this one right here. And then if we look closely, this guy right here is the chain. So I'm going to be putting my half double crochets in the clustered stitch and then just around the chain. When you've made it all the way back around, you want to make sure that you end by making a half double crochet into the last space in between those clusters, and then we can join with the slip stitch to the first chain. Sometimes it's helpful if you mark that chain with the stitch marker, that way when you can see it better when you come back around. So to finish off our cowls, we just want to work rounds 18 through 23 in the same way. So we'll cover the first round here and then we'll move on to the finish. To begin round 18 and also 19 through 23, we want to start off by chaining 1, and then we want to flip our work and we're going to work our half double crochets in the back bar only. So I pointed this out earlier on in the video, but just to cover it one more time, we want to find our first half double crochet stitch. You can see that right here. And so this V right here is the front loop and the back loop for that first half double crochet. But if we rotate it a little bit further, you can see another bar, which is right here. That's where we're going to be working our half double crochets. Now this first one is always a little bit more difficult to get into, just since it's the very first stitch. But once you get through that one, it becomes very easy to work our stitches into these back bars. So locating the next half double crochet, I can see the front loop and the back loop, and rotating it forward, then I can see that back bar right there. So we just want to make one half double crochet into the back bar of every single stitch. And like I mentioned, we're going to do that for this round, which is round 18, and then 19 through 23 as well. And that's going to finish off the crocheting of our cowls. When you come to the end of the round, you just want to find that chain 1 again, which is right here, and join with a slip stitch. So at this point, all that's left to do is crochet rounds 19 through 23. We're going to work those in the same way that we just did this previous round 18. So go ahead and finish crocheting your cowl. We'll meet back up. We'll talk about how to weave in our ends and finish up our project. Once you've completed up to round 23, we're ready to go ahead and bind off. And then all we need to do is weave in our ends. This concludes our video demonstration on the skyscraper cowl. Please stay tuned at BHookedCrochet.com for more free tutorials and great patterns.